right, what's going on, everybody? Happy Friday. My name is Rob Gardner. I go by Poker Pastor here on Twitch, and I am joined by a very special guest, someone who is near and dear to my heart. I think she represents the game of poker. She's a great ambassador. I've never seen her do anything but smile. I want you guys to introduce you to LoriAnn Persinger. How are you doing tonight?
Hello, everyone. I'm doing fine. And after that great intro, I think we're done. No, I'm kidding. Hello, everybody. And thank you for having me, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, all things considered. It's been an interesting week, not gonna lie, but we're trucking along here, and this is exciting for me. Having seen, having played with you several times and getting to interact with you at the tables, having some great battles, and then getting to see how this opportunity came about and following you through every day of the WPT was absolutely incredible. But before we get there, I want to go back and talk just a little bit about you and kind of let people get to know you. I noticed on your profile when I was looking this morning, you and your husband are both Navy veterans.
Yeah, yes, we are. Thank you for noticing that. That's actually how we met. We're both stationed in New Orleans and worked in the same office and actually started out as best friends. Used to tell each other our relationship woes. And we're like, you two should get together. No, I'm never marrying another sailor. And well, strange things happen, and we'll be celebrating our 33rd anniversary in June of this year. We actually got married in Vegas.
Wow. Well, congratulations on the 33 years. And also, thank you so much for your service. Really appreciate that.
I should say you're very welcome.
It also says in your profile that you're like this reality TV show, game show, like champion, whiz. Tell us what that's all about.
Where do I start? I love game shows, first and foremost. And I've always, when I was younger, dreamed of being on game shows. And one of my favorites is kind of started with Wheel of Fortune. Went and auditioned when we were stationed in San Diego. And it's one of these where they do their groupings where they do a week. They have military week, a San Diego week, and a college week. I auditioned for the military week, but didn't get selected because they still wanted active duty who could wear the uniforms on the actual program. But I did get selected for San Diego week and went on to win my show. And it kind of went from there. And after that, I did Price is Right. I went up with a group of coworkers, and they let you know going in. There was 25 of us, 25 or 26. They tell you, they're going to pick one. They just don't tell you who it's going to be. And you literally get like 10 seconds to audition. And they were like, how you doing? I channeled Joey from Friends. I was like, how you doing? And apparently that was good enough because this was in fact one of Bob Barker's last shows.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's kind of cool. And what's amazing is when they start and they first start saying the names, I didn't even know my name had gotten called. I was literally the first name they called. And my friend sitting next to me is like, they were playing Beyonce Crazy in Love, so I'm jamming to the music. And they're standing there because back then, I don't know if they still do it, the first 4 contestants, they hold your name up on a big cardboard piece of paper, which I still have to this day. And they called my name and I was like, oh my God. So then the panic kind of set in because I was just going to have fun. I didn't know the prices, and my biggest regret, our biggest fear was I'm going to be in contestants row the whole show.
Right.
But I ended up getting on stage the very second game. I was lucky enough that it came around and I bid on a floor rug, which we still have to this day. And I just bid $1 over the highest price and I got on stage. And I ended up winning a car, which was the second car. When I was on Wheel of Fortune, I won a car in cash. So a kind of funny side story to that is my husband was at the time, one of his coworkers found out I was going to the show. So he says, tell your wife if she wins another car, I'll buy it from her. So I was just like, oh yeah, sure. Piece of cake. Everybody wins a car. First of all, I was like, his name was Mike. Does he even know how hard that is? First of all, they pick, 9 contestants for the whole show, I think, or something like that. We only give away 2 cars per show, one in the first half, one in the second half. Well, it just so happens on my show, they did give away 3. But just to even get on the show, so I was just like, how many things had to literally align for that to happen? Well, they aligned. I got up on stage and I won a car. I was playing the spelling bee game. So after the show was over, we all stopped to have dinner before making a long drive from Hollywood back to San Diego. And I called my husband, who was still at work, and I was kind of like, well, I got on the show. I got on stage. Oh, and by the way, I won a car. And my husband, being who he is, his classic, no filter, he's like, I don't know if I can say it, but I'll just say it. He said, are you effing kidding me? People, are you fucking kidding me? So then I was like, no. So then I hear, he says, Mike, you got to buy a car. And sure enough, he did. He bought it from me. because it's
Wow.
kind of cool when you win a car. I don't know if anyone's familiar, if you ever win a car or anything you win on game shows, it counts as income.
Yep.
But it's really nice that when you win a car, the ones they have on stage you see in the program is just kind of for show. The dealership that they have a contract with, they will reach out to you and ask you. I mean, they basically build it up from the ground for you. So I got
Oh,
to pick the
wow.
color, the interior, and everything. And they even shipped it down to the local dealership. You're just responsible for paying the tax, title, and license up front. So that
That's
was my,
nice.
so yes, so that was my second game show. I then did Catch 21 when my husband was actually on his second tour in Iraq. And from there, actually, the first one we ended up doing together was a reality competition game show called TNT's The Great Escape. And we
Hmm.
ended up having to, our episode was called The Institution. And we were the red team. And we competed against a blue and a green team and went on to win that. And we won. That was the first time I ever won $100,000.
Oh
And it
my
was kind of,
goodness.
so yeah, but it was funny when we auditioned and got picked for the show. Originally, it was supposed to, and I say only in quotations, it was only supposed to be 50,000, which was cool. I mean, it's $50,000.
Yeah.
But then we were getting ready to film that day and signing the paperwork is when they first told us and we found out that it was for $100,000. So going up
Wow.
to the trip, I was kind of chill. You know, I told my husband, we're doing this together. Let's just have fun. But then when you find out it's that much money, it does kind of get a little serious.
Mm-hmm.
So we ended up winning the show. And then a few months later that year, I was on Let's Ask America. I was one of four. They did a show for Veterans Day, and they picked one person to represent each branch of the military. So obviously, I represented the Navy, and
Yeah.
I ended up winning that show. And then the last one was um, it escapes me. What's the one we did? It was the last one with my husband, Celebrity Name Game. My
Okay.
husband and I did one together, and we ended up winning the show together on that one. We didn't get the bonus round, but we did win the game.
So
So that's
so the champion thing is very legit. Like you
yeah.
literally just swept the table on all this. That's incredible. I'm gonna have
I
to
just
dig through YouTube after the stream with my wife. We're gonna have to look
I
some of
know
these
they're
up
out
and
there somewhere. I've always told my husband that if I could just channel how well I do in game shows into poker, it would just be incredible. Because I just always had the attitude when I was selected for the game shows that in my mind, I had already won by just being picked to be on the show. So
right.
anything above that was, so I was winning just kind of, what the heck attitude. And I guess it
Yeah.
just worked out.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
You're
had
free
no
rolling at
secret
that point.
formula for it or anything. I can't even tell you. I just kind of go with the flow.
So let's transition to that. How did you get into the
Mhm.
game of poker? What brought you into the game?
Actually, my husband did.
Oh, okay.
I mentioned this in an interview before. We used to come to Vegas 2 or 3 times a year. And whenever I came to Vegas, my husband would actually play poker back then. I think he was just dabbling in limit. And I've always watched it on TV for years. I mean, going back clear to the late 80s. And even I've said this in another interview where I used to watch a grainy production that was on at like 2 in the morning called
Hmm.
Poker at the Plaza. And I mean,
Oh,
just
wow.
low production, but I was fascinated by it. And then when they introduced the whole cards, I remember I even watched the World Series of Poker when it was still down on Fremont Street. So
Yeah,
I've
that's a
watched it
little
for
while ago.
years. Yes. And my husband used to tell me, you should play it. And my thing was, we're on vacation. I don't want to have to think because when it's poker, you have to think and do strategy. I just wanted to, as the term, I love my Baileys and coffee. So all I
Hmm.
wanted to do on vacation was just have the Baileys coffee in one hand and push the button with the other. Just play my penny slots. That's all I wanted to do on vacation. But then honestly, once I sat down, I started with limit in the Flamingo poker room. Started
Mm.
with limit, and once I sat down, and then back home where we used to play, it's much bigger now, but Saquon Casino in the San Diego area,
Yeah.
started playing limit there before I transitioned over to no limit. And just once I sat down, it was kind of went from there.
So I'm super curious because in my experience of playing with you, you obviously are very good and you handle
I'm
so.
trying to be very
No,
good.
no,
Thank
like
you.
one of the things that's always impressed me in our battles is you adjust. You adjust to the
Mhm.
people at the table, you adjust to me. You don't play the same way, every tournament. You're
Yeah.
obviously very adept to knowing what's going on. And so
Mhm.
I'm curious, like, how did you learn the game? Did you have any coaches? Were you part of any training sites? Like, how did you work your way up in the game and get better?
I actually think well, in my opinion, I never had a personal coach to answer your question, but I kind of felt I had some of the best coaching you could possibly have, and that was being part of the poker media.
Mm,
And because that allowed me to watch hands up close and watch, in my opinion, or my model for myself has always been, I'm not a pro, I just want to play like one. So I've had the privilege, or however you want to say it, of seeing
yeah.
the best players play up close. And like I said, watch the hands, and a lot of people, I guess I'm actually kind of a nerd when it comes to watching poker. I love watching live streams. And that's how, like I said, I just feel that if you want to be the best, you watch the best. In
Right.
fact, right now I'm missing the live stream at Poker Go, the 50K final table. And trust me, I will watch the replay later because it fascinates me to watch the best players play
Mm,
and to know, even though they don't give everything away, just to know or try to figure out what their thought process is. And that's honestly, that's the best answer I can give. I just learned from watching the best players. Like I
that's
said, a few years ago, I was fortunate enough to have kind of an intern. I covered, it was the US Poker Open back in
okay.
February 2019, before I covered the World Series and started working for Poker News. And when you're in that studio and you're seeing those players, granted, because everyone knows it's the same group of players, but they are
Right.
the best players in the world. So I got to watch them up close. And like I said, I'm not saying I'm anywhere in their stratosphere whatsoever, but like I said, that's where my poker education came from, so to speak.
That's really incredible. Are there any like big names that you like their style or you prefer to emulate some of what they do? Like, is there anybody you're kind of gravitating towards?
Um, as far as play and run good, right now, if I could channel anyone right now, honestly, it would be Steven Song
Mm,
because he is just on another level right now. He plays good. I mean, he's a great player, but he runs well. And I don't know, it's definitely more, I'd say about 60-40, but when you play as well as he does, but you also run as well as he does, it's just, in my opinion, it's an unstoppable combination.
yeah.
So I look up to him. But as far as class at the table and overall just being a good person, a good poker ambassador, I've said for many years now, ever since I first met him, my favorite poker player is still Anthony Zeno. I just
Mm,
love his class. I've loved him from day one, watching him, because the way he carries himself, and even when we still talk, he's just such a gentleman. And the way he was at the table, I always love the fact that he wore a suit at the table. I
hmm.
love that.
Yeah.
So,
Speaking of class, I've seen you take some horrific beats, and I've seen you have horrific weeks even, and
oh,
I have never seen you do anything but smile. What is
oh,
it? What? I mean, look,
you
we
mean I
all
don't
have
flip the
bad
table over
days.
like a
I mean, we all have bad days, but you always are in such a good mood. You are such a great spirit at the table. People enjoy playing with you. What is it that allows you to keep your cool and just always stay in such a bright and positive attitude at the table?
Honestly, one, I will say inside, I'm ready to throw up on the table. I'll just get that out there
Sure.
right now. Because you were with me last year with the back-to-back days with the flop a set of fours, turn a boat and lose on the river, and
Yeah.
back-to-back days. So you were there to witness that. Yes, that was pretty bad. But I just think inside, like I said, I'm ready to throw up and just flip the table over. But I just think then I calm, because I mean, I'm normal, I'm human. But I just take a moment and breathe and just realize that I'm just fortunate to just be able to play the game. And that
Yeah.
honestly is what keeps me sane. Even my husband asked me that too. He doesn't know how I do it sometimes, or he wishes that he had my temperament. And I told him it's not always easy, but just I just sometimes go. Of course, when I get away from the table, I'm like, stop, or we'll say
Sure.
I've wanted to kick a wall more than one time. So yes, I am.
No,
I want to
I
know,
think
yes,
it's
I'm
great.
smiling, but I'm human.
Yeah, no, I think it's great. I think you really represent the game well, and it's so much fun. Like you sit down at the
Mhm.
table, and I'm like, yay!
You
No, like
actually are. You are so cool to play. I can't even lie.
we've had some sick battles, and I
Yeah.
think we're pretty even keel at this point, which is good. We can keep
Mhm.
it that way.
Yep.
So let's talk about this incredible WPT experience. Let's start with just the finding out about the giveaways, how you got involved, how did you win your seat? Kind of take us through that story.
Well, when I first found out about them, because through following the poker bloggers, and Ashley Sleece was the first one. I think I ended up entering five total, five or six, but there were people I followed on vlogs. And Ashley, I entered hers first, and Andrew's was the second one I entered. My goal going in was I was just going to enter as many as I could that I qualified, whatever their stipulations they put, because for those of those of you out there that aren't familiar, the WPT ambassadors, they played on WPT Global with the understanding that if they won one of these packages, that they would have to hold contests to give them away, which they all did. So like I said, I entered 5 different contests. I think it might have been 6. I think I'm forgetting one. I entered one for Ashley Sleeve. Andrew Neeme was my second one. I entered one for Maria Konnikova, Jeff Platt, and also for Faded Spade. Because I figured at that point, I just had nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Right.
And I was literally sitting on the couch watching TV. And when we had our qualifier dinner, I remember telling Andrew, because we actually never even met until the meetup game. I stopped in to say hello.
Really?
And thank him. Yeah, never ever. I had been watching it. And the other thing that's kind of interesting is the first I had heard of Andrew, but I had been watching the other vlogs. And when you do YouTube, I don't know how the algorithms work. Once I started watching so many of them, they started popping up. So I went from watching Ashley and Lexi, got to show the ladies some love, to watching. I started watching Rampage and then Brad and Andrew finally came up. And I kid you not, the first time I ever watched Andrew's vlog was he was in Cambodia on a trip. And the vlog date was August 31st. And I thought that was kind of interesting because that's my birthday. So at the time I thought, wow, I find this vlogger on my birthday and the date, because he dates his vlogs, and it was dated my birthday. So I just kind of went from there and just started watching. And when I entered, as I started to say, when I got the notification, it popped up on my phone, I started screaming and crying. I could not believe it. And I immediately texted my husband because I felt he could use some good news. And this is a true story. He had actually just flown to Arizona the day before. His brother-in-law passed away unexpectedly of a heart attack.
No.
And yes, so I was able to text him this. They're literally getting ready to go into the services, and I texted him this good news. And honestly, as happy as I was, he'll tell me to this day, I think he was happier for me because he knew how much it meant to me.
Yeah.
So at that point, it's one of these things like when I got selected for game shows, I was just happy from there. I thought anything else, I had no expectations going in other than I was just stoked that he even picked me because I know how many people applied for it, and I was just gonna just have a great time with it.
So were there any, like, how was it determined who got picked? Was there any like application, or was it just random, or how did they decide?
For Andrew's particular contest, he just wanted people to, via Twitter, he held one other one on his Instagram, and I don't have an Instagram account, so I can't remember. I just know that's how Elle won her package. He had 4 qualifiers total, and Elle from Canada, she won through Instagram. But he had his Twitter contest. He just wanted us to, the term was why you think you're deserving, but makes you kind of uncomfortable. Jesse and I talked about this when we were uncomfortable saying why I'm more deserving than somebody else. But I just wanted to express why I was passionate about poker. And that's what I did, and the characters that Twitter would allow. And
awesome.
I got picked. Yeah, that's how I got picked.
Had you ever played a 10K event, like the main event or anything like this prior to this tournament?
No, never.
What was the biggest buy-in you'd played before this?
The biggest buy, I played a WPT event, the Legends of Poker, back in 2016. That was a 3,500 event. I played that one. But
yeah, so this is
help getting into that. It was kind of a birthday gift from someone.
This was a jump then. So
did you huge jump?
Did you do anything different to prepare, or did you just kind of go in relaxed and I'm just going to do what I usually do and see how it goes?
Yes to that, but actually, and here I bring up Anthony again. When I told Anthony I had won the package, I reached out to him and asked him I would appreciate any and all advice he could give to me. I mean, he's a 3-time WPT champion. So actually, we were at Wynn, standing in front of the Wynn Poker Room, getting ready to go to the qualifier dinner, and I run into Anthony. So in fact, we're talking, and in fact, made everyone a little late for dinner because I didn't want to rush Anthony, but the best advice he gave me, other than just be myself and use my image, I'm not going to give all the secrets, but that was first and foremost, is to use the perception that I'm nice. And I will never forget my husband saying, "Well, she's not that nice." It's like, no, I'm not. But he's like, "You're going to be able to get away with bluffs that I would never be able to get away with. So use that to your advantage." And and there was another important piece of advice I forget. In fact, my husband reminded me of it, I think going into day 3, and I can't remember exactly what it was. It was 2, and shame on me for forgetting, but it was something else. He says, "Remember Anthony told you?" And he's like, "Yes, he did." So I used that as well. So that was basically my training going in.
All right. So you walk in, it's day 1. You're in the beautiful Wynn, one of the wonderful venues in Vegas. Always a blast to play there. What was it like sitting down? What was your table draw like? How were your nerves? Talk us through that first day.
My first day, honestly, sitting down, I took pictures. Believe it or not, it's kind of like anything else I go into. Like even this, my husband would say I'm a nervous wreck beforehand. But once I sat down, I got lucky. I had Teach on my left. And anyone who follows WPT or any live events knows Teach, the retired teacher. He always wears yellow. He was on my direct left. And we just started talking, and I was immediately comfortable. And ironically, with the table draw, Andrew ended up being on the table right next to me.
Oh,
So that
nice.
made it, that, yes, figure the odds of that. So going in from the beginning, I was just honestly just so freaking happy to be there that the nerves just kind of, once the shuffle up and deal, I've always thought when people say going into the Super Bowl, oh, it's just another game, whatever. And I would always think that's a load of crap. But now that I've been in that situation, I still think it's a load of crap. But
Yeah.
now that I'm there, once I sat down, I just had the mentality, okay, Lori, it's just I'm playing the Sunday tournament in Orleans. That's the only way. Because otherwise, if I didn't approach it like that, I probably would have freaked out.
Nice.
Mhm.
So as the day goes on, are we accumulating? Like how's our stack going through day one, and how are we heading towards the bag?
There were some ups and downs. In fact, I started out kind of slow. I did a key hand where I almost tripled up pretty much, and that kind of helped me going. I'm trying to remember. Day one is for the most part kind of a blur into the last part of day one, and I'll tell you why in a moment. But there was a key hand where there was a raise, and I just flatted. And I was in the hijack, and the young guy, forget his name too, we ended up talking later. He 3-bet on the button. He had just sat down, so no read or whatever. And it gets back to the original raiser, and he thinks about it and just calls. So, and then in his hand, I had ace king. So I'm thinking the original raiser couldn't have been that strong because I figured he would have he would have ISO'd if he was that strong, just get heads up. And the button, like I said, a young kid, I'm thinking he could just be 3-betting kind of wide there because it's the button position. And I just decided, I just went all in. I thought about it and went all in. The button thought about it for a moment. Long story short, then he goes all in behind. I'm thinking, what I just
Oh,
walk into? And the original raiser asks for a count and then calls both all ins.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Huge
So, and
spot.
Andrew's in the next table, and I'm just thinking, well, here goes my turn. I'm like, there is no way Ace King is going to hold here. And I didn't know what the original raiser had, but he had pocket sevens. And my original thought was maybe he flatted just to sucker me in, like he had
Right.
kings or. And I thought I just totally stepped into it. Well, no, he had pocket sevens. So it was a little suspect calling 2 shoves with pocket sevens.
Mm-hmm.
And the button had ace queen of spades. So it came, if I'm not mistaken, it was a 10 high flop, but an ace right on the turn.
Oh my gosh.
And then the river was a brick. So, and I just literally jumped up out of my seat, and Andrew was the next day. So he came over. I was like, so that was pretty much a triple up. So, and like that definitely got my adrenaline going.
I was gonna say, how long did it take for the nerves to go down after that? That's
I don't know,
a big
because
hand.
I think I set out a few hands because, to be honest, I'm pretty sure even now that my hands were shaking pretty bad because it
For
was just
sure.
like holy moly. I was just like, no 7, no queen on the river, no 7, because I did win the main. The side ended up being, there was a little side pot that was still left. But yes, so that was basically my triple up.
Awesome. So that catapults you into day two. How was your day two draw?
My day 2 draw wasn't that bad, but I started out day 2 with Brian Rast on my table.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, and early on, honestly, on day 2, I did get a little nervous and a little scared because I actually got down to 12 big blinds on day 2, early on day 2. So, and Brian Rast actually put me in a grind early on. He raised under the gun, and here we go with the ace king again. I 3-bet from, it was the cutoff. It gets back around to him, and he thinks for a moment, and he goes all in. And I was just like, I've seen Brian play. I know he can be pretty aggressive, but I'm thinking, is there anything he's ever shoving with less here than ace king in this spot? Do I really want to race for my turn? And lo and behold, I did end up folding. Not sure what he had, although he did tell me the very next day, which I'll get to. We ended up next to each other starting on day 3. He did tell me that when we talked, he said, if you tell me what you folded, I'll tell you. He actually let me know he folded ace king as well.
Oh, wow.
I was kind of impressed that I did fold ace keys like you can. I said, I can call it. I said, but no, I said, I was putting you on no less than ace king there. I said, but if I'm wrong, it's not the right, that's not when I want to be wrong.
Right.
So I ended up folding, and my key hand, I had a day 2 ended up, there was 2 very big hands for me. This was the first one where I ended up all in with king 6 of spades in the small blind versus king 8 of diamonds in the big blind.
Oh, wow.
And I spiked a 6 on the turn.
Jeez.
Yes. So believe me, that was one of the other times I did kind of let out a, where you say I kind of keep my emotions kind of even killed at the
Yeah.
table. I was not even killed. Yes, I was pretty excited and pretty happy at that point on
It's
that. So
wild
I
when you
don't.
have Yeah, it's wild when you have big runs like that, and then you think back to those hands, and you think, "What
Yeah.
if?" Like, what if
Yes.
that hadn't card to come in the turn? But you got to run good
Yes.
to go deep in tournaments. It's a part of the process. So, okay, so that sets you up really good heading into day three, right?
No,
And
no, that's not actually, I didn't mean to cut you off, Rob.
oh
That's
no,
not
you're
what
good.
set me up. That's what I was going to get to. So they broke our table and I ended
Okay,
up on the table where I had Nora Schwartz to my immediate left. And I was also at the table with Jeremy Osmus. What set
brutal.
me up ended up putting me finishing day two in top 10 in chip stacks, which I didn't know actually until Andrew told me at the end of the day. He put a little part in his blog that showed that. And when he told me at the time, I was like, there's no way. And then once it turns out, yes, I was, but I didn't look because it would have freaked me out. But
Right,
what had happened was the player raised, I think he was raised the cutoff or hijack. He raised, I three bet from the small blind. And he called the three bet. The flop came ace, ace, six. So I'm thinking I'm playing it tricky. I see bet the ace, ace, six flop, figuring I'm holding ace queen, just to give you a heads up. I figure he's never going to put me on betting aces there. I'm going to play it. So if he's got a pair bigger than the six, he's got to call.
right.
So I bet out. I see bet. He does raise me. I'm thinking I'm getting exactly what I want here. But he did kind of a good size raise. So I thought, well, if I just flat it, might look suspicious. Or if he's got a pair that's bigger than the six, I'm just going to get it in now. Was my thought process. Or he's either going to fold or call, and we'll just get the hand over. Because the only hands I'm worried about at that point are pocket sixes or ace king.
Right.
And I figured he might have come back over the top with ace king. I'm not sure because it was late position, but then maybe playing it kind of tight since I did three bet from the small blind. Well, lo and behold, I shove, he snap calls. I'm like, huh, he's got ace king or pocket sixes. He had pocket sixes. Ace right on the turn.
Wow.
That was my hand for day two. Yeah. So I thought if I flat, the ace comes on the turn, it would have been a hold because I'm probably never going to get as much value as I did. I got
Right.
lucky, no doubt about it. But in fact, that hand, I took a picture, is now my screensaver on my phone because
I don't
that
blame you.
hand.
That's that it's hard enough to
So
get quads, especially in a tournament of that size and stature.
that
So
magnitude, yes.
so
So that was
now,
my hand on
wow.
day
So now
three.
you're top 10 heading into day three, and day three is when you guys are going to hit the money, right? Like that's.
Right.
So what was the money bubble like? How did that run in this tournament?
Actually, that was kind of crazy. One, it was actually really nice to come into day three and have a stack where technically I was not in danger, unless something like a huge cooler, but I was a really good chip stack on my table. I started the day with Brian Rast on my immediate right. And unfortunately, in fact, one of the hands they wrote up, I got lucky. I busted for Brian. He was pretty close to the money. He got it in with ace king. I had ace queen of clubs. And he flops top pair. He goes runner, runner, gut shot, Broadway. And that's how I busted Brian Ross in the tournament, which was kind of brutal. And probably like me, he actually took it pretty well. He told everyone good luck, but probably like me, I'm sure on the inside, he was like, and then I ended up having Freddie Deep on my left. And what reason it's important to Freddie Deep is because when we got down to the bubble, I don't know if you ever seen the replays, there was a double bust out on the bubble. Tony Dunst was one of them, but the other one actually happened to be on our table. The lady in seat one was all in with aces against Freddie Deep's tens, and he spiked a 10 on the flop.
Oh
And
wow.
what made it even more brutal was she and Tony got the split because they basically went out at the same time, so they ended up each splitting the min cash. But what made it even more brutal, in my opinion, is because while we were on the bubble and people kept surviving, I'm not making this up. We actually had a conversation. The four of us, I was in seat four, she was in one. So 1, 2, 3, 4, we were talking about how brutal it would be to go out on the money bubble in this event with pocket aces. And the poor lady ends up going out on the money bubble with pocket aces. I just thought that to me was the worst part of it, to
Yeah.
actually have that conversation and then have that happen to her. So then, yes,
Wow.
the bubble burst, and it was just nice at that point to be in the biggest tournament of my life and not actually be sweating the money bubble.
Right.
And I, at that point, honestly accomplished. I had two things going in. When I went into day 1A, my goal in the beginning was to just make day two. It's my first ever 10K. All I wanted to do was bag for day two. So I accomplished that. And then once I got later in the later stages of day two, I started to think, okay, now I just want to min cash. So my
Right.
my goals kept changing, but I just thought, because normally as poker players in tournaments, your goal is not to min cash, but in this
Yeah.
case, it's a total free roll. So I was totally happy with min cash.
So heading into the end of day 3, were there any significant hands? Were we accumulating? Like, how were we coming, heading to the third day bag?
At the end of day 3?
Yeah.
Or heading into day 3? Wait, no,
No,
we were
at the
on
end
day
of day 3,
3.
like wrapping day 3 up.
Oh,
How?
actually, yes, there were. Actually, at the very end of day 3 is when I found out our table had been picked for the live stream.
Oh
So
man.
we were the very last table on day 3 of the live stream. And that's actually where it was a combination of panic and excitement set in.
Right,
Because
for sure.
it's just like, I've always dreamed as a poker player to one day play on a live stream. But then once the reality gets there, it's kind of like, oh my God, because I've watched enough streams. And I remember first thing I did on break, because they told us to make sure we're back a little early to get, because we have to be mic'd up and turn phones and everything. So first thing I did on break, I went out and I called my husband real quick and I said, I'm about to go on stream. I said, let my family know. And then I got panicky because I'm thinking, I've watched enough live streams to know the chat can be brutal. And I thought, oh my God, my parents are gonna be watching this. Just please don't be nasty. You know,
Right.
that was my biggest fear. And in fact, I was in the hall and I had stopped to the side to charge my phone when I was, like I said, was talking to my husband. I had it on charger and Brad Owen stopped by and I told him I was getting ready to go on the stream. Was there any advice he can offer? And he just said, whatever you've been doing, just keep doing it and just be yourself.
Yeah. So,
And honestly, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead. You're good.
I was going to say, so actually, I was very nervous until it started. And once I got up there, I was just totally, it's one of these where you think, okay, it's kind of like when I did game shows. As I keep saying, I'm always a nervous wreck. But once I sat down and I just thought, you know, you're never going to get this chance again. Just enjoy it and just make the most of it. And not knowing I was going to end up being on the stream the next day. But at the time, I didn't know that. And there were 2 key hands on the stream. For those that haven't seen it, there was a hand where Aaron Massey raised. I think it ended up being 4-way. Along the flop came King, King 3. We checked around. A deuce on the turn. It checks to the button. He's the only one that bets. He bets. I'm the only one that calls. The river was a brick or something else. I check, and he bets, and I think about it. And this is could be one of the downsides to being on a stream. In hindsight, I check shoved and he snap called. Well, he had pocket 3s. I had king queen. So I lost 45%.
A lot.
I lost 45% of my stack. And this is one of these things where when you're on a stream, you think, if I just call here, I'm just going to look like a total nit. Well, it turns out I would look like a total genius had I just made the call. So, because he ended up having a boat. However, the very next hand, this is where I said there was 2 straight hands. This happens. Jean-Claude, who ended up placing 3rd overall, he raised under the gun. The gentleman who I just lost to, I forget his name. Was it Henry? I can't remember. He 3 bets in the cutoff. I'm on the button. I 4 bet. Jean-Claude quickly folds. Henry then shoves, and I snap call. He says, you have ace. I actually woke up with pocket aces the very next hand. Wow. And Henry had pocket queens. And I thought to myself, it's going to look like I'm totally on tilt after losing pretty much half my stack.
Exactly.
And I got aces the very next hand against the same guy versus kings. It was so, yes, it was 2 straight hands. And I remember, I thought I looked at the same card twice the first time because I'm thinking there's no way I just got aces. So I looked and I was like, I have aces here. And Melissa, she was so, I guess she's on the line, Melissa Schubert, I remember when I watched the stream back later, she says, if he just looks over at Lori, he'll know she's got, because he said something like, I had this grin on my face. It looks like I was trying to contain it. And it turns out, I guess I was, because, you know, it just looks like I was going to be on tilt. And it turns out I was not. Wow. But that was a dream spot right there.
So how were you set up going into day 4? Were you towards the top or?
I can't remember. I thought would I come back the day 4? Like 30 something. I think I was in 30 something place. My husband, to be honest, was keeping track of it a lot closer than I was. I just didn't, because at this point too, it started getting a little overwhelming for me, because after the stream and I was starting to get the attention, and my phone was kind of blowing up on Twitter and things like that.
Yeah.
I would try to answer some people. In fact, going into day 4, I think it was, I finally did put out a tweet saying, I see everything everybody's saying, but I just can't respond to everybody. So at that that point, I was literally just trying to respond to my immediate family and people that I've known for years that I know were watching. But going into Dave, I think I was in the 30s, like the top third, I believe. And that was going into, was that, I'll make sure my days aren't running together. Was that early on? Yes, that was going into day 4 because I ended up with Jeff Madsen and Asher Conniff on my immediate. I was in seat 4 again, and Jeff was in seat 5, and Asher was in seat 6.
These are all brutal table draws to me. You're like, these aren't too bad. I'm like, man, I don't want to play with any of these people. So at this point, is it starting to sink in that like there is an is it starting to sink in that, hey, I could win this tournament. I could make a really deep run. Like, is there any of that starting to like, resonate, or is it still very surreal at this point?
No, at that point wasn't even, so it was totally surreal, and not the thought of winning it nowhere even crossed my mind at that point. I just wanted to, at this point, I was like, I'm already in the money. I can't remember. I came back here. It was 20 something thousand at that point. I just thought at this point, like you said, as I remember I said in one interview, and I remember telling Jesse Fullen Jesse was so funny, from Poker News. His mantra to me, and excuse the language, but was put chips in the fucking bag. That was his mantra to me. And I would text him later that night and say, I put chips in the fucking bag.
Yep.
Or as I told somebody, I just wanted a pink slip. Pink slip is normally not good, but in this case, you want the pink slip because it goes in the bag.
Yeah, exactly.
So that was just my goal, was just to keep getting a pink slip.
So how did day 4 go then? At this point, you're free rolling basically everything. I mean, you're getting the incredible experience. How were the nerves? Any key hands? Like, how did that day play out?
The key hand on day 4 was, which they did a write-up, I was able to, it was kind of crazy because I think it was the second hand played at our table. The first hand, we had the clock called. We started out kind of weird. The clock was called because Jeff went into the tank for over 5 minutes. They called the clock. Very next hand is blind versus blind. And I limped in because he's on my left, and I limped in with, was it ace deuce of clubs or ace 3 of clubs? Figuring he's going to raise. So I figured rather than raise and get 3 bet, I just figured I would check call. Right. And he did what I expect. He raised. So I flopped the nut flush draw. So he goes check call, trying to do pot control. Well, I bricked out on the river. So I'm thinking, I don't know if ace high is good here or not, but either way, I'm going to put him at a decision for a big portion of his stack. So I put out a big bet. I think at this point, it was over a third of his stack. I can't remember because I have to remember the write-up. And he tanked so long again that they called the clock again. It was over 5 minutes. And at this point, I'm just sitting here going, for the love of God, just be cool. Don't next to me. So he's looking me up and down, and I'm just sitting there, and I just was not to give anything away. And he finally makes the call, and I just go, oh, I says, you got it. So, and I tabled my hand. I tabled the miss flush draw, and he mucked his cards. So I have no idea what he tanked with that whole time, but my ace high was good.
Wow. That
was a key. And in fact, they did a write-up about it. But even the table, I told, when we ended up, because a little while after that, we ended up going onto the stage, but I made the guy in seat 9, who was known later on, if you saw the stream, as Thor, because he did have a hammer and he kind of looked like Thor. But I told him I was sitting there just trying to use the force to get him to fold. I was just like, fold, because by then the cameras were there, and the reporting team was also there. So I'm thinking, I'm going to get caught bluffing, and here's the write-up. But no, I have no idea what he called me with. It was just like, in fact, to this day, I went, oh my God, I could not believe my hand was good. And then, but he was pretty cool about it. Both he and Asher, they said it was very smart that I tabled my hand. They said, because most people, when caught in a bluff, will muck, because they don't want to see. I said, no, I figured if you called me, I put that much of your stack out, I'm paying for the information, so I'm going to table my hand. Yeah. I get caught bluffing, that's part of the game. Well, as it turns out, because I tabled my hand, I ended up winning the pot, and it was a pretty good pot.
Wow, must have had like a worse ace high that just thought you were on
I was sitting on ace deuce. I think it was ace deuce. It was either ace deuce
then it couldn't have been.
Or ace 3 of clubs. That's what I'm saying. I don't know. So
that is crazy.
He called me with king high. He also had a miss flush draw as well. So I, to this day, have no idea what he called me with.
So now you go to the TV table again, and now you're a seasoned veteran at live stream tables. You're a professional. How many people left at this point, roughly, you think?
Oh my goodness!
Just ballpark.
Were we down to? Honestly, I know I could look on my phone or if I had my husband because I have certain things that I've kept. But at the time, I'm trying to remember where we were at that point, down to maybe, were we even at 100 players? Because I remember the reason it's key is because Asher, because Jeff busted pretty early right at the table, but there was a key hand where it required a pay jump, and it ended up being another big hand where Asher had kings, the other lady at the table, and I'm so sorry, I forget her name, she had queens. They run into the big blind with aces. And
Oh
it
my
was right
gosh.
on a pay jump. So I don't know if we were down to 40, 60 some play, wherever there was a pay jump. And because Asher raised, she shoved, and the guy makes the call. And Asher didn't leave himself much behind. And he literally was sitting there watching the clock to see if we could lose another player. And he was tanking, which we're fine. It involved a pay jump. So
Yeah.
I wasn't going to say anything.
Yeah, yeah,
But he
exactly.
didn't leave himself behind. I mean, he obviously wasn't folding. And he even said that, he says, you really have aces? And the guy, he did. He had aces. But it was a three-way, and the guy has aces and knocks two players out. So I don't know if we were up to 60 something at that point or thereabouts. To be honest, on that one, Rob, I'm not
Nice.
sure.
No, that's fine.
I
So
think we were down to double digits at that point.
we'll call it 60. You get to the you get to the stream table. What was stream table number 2 like?
Oh, it was fun because it was people I've been playing with. We actually ended up, I had a good time. By then I was relaxed.
Yeah.
I did get a bluff through, which was nice because I showed a hand earlier where, and I know some people don't think that you should show, but my thing is it's the stream. They're going to see later anyway. And the guy, in fact, I said, you're going to find out later. So I had flopped a set of fives and a heads up pot. He had the jack, it was jack high, but it allowed me to later on get away with a bluff. So it kind of worked out for me. Okay.
Using that image like it was talked about. Yeah, the advice you got earlier. So how'd you end up day 4? Where were you sitting?
Day 4, I actually ended up kind of short. I went card dead, unfortunately, for the remainder of the day. But what was really nice was, I didn't know at the time, of course, is that I ended up playing on the table, my last table of day 4, ended up playing with Colton, who was in C3. Colton ended up going out was he the 6th place finisher, I think, on the final table? Colton, who's really cool, and then the eventual winner. We're actually on my final day 4 table.
Oh, nice.
At the time, I don't know that, but yes, so I did get to plplay with them briefly. But I ended up very short.
Yeah, how much sleep did you get going into day 5?
Day 5, I'm trying to remember because that was the day I just did not respond to anything. In fact, because my husband, he worked 6 to 2 in security. He got home and I had fallen asleep on the couch, and he just put a blanket on me and just let me sleep. So by then, I think at that point, everything really had hit me that I'm going into day 5 of the biggest tournament I've ever played in my life and biggest WPT tournament of all time. So at that point, everything really had hit me, and I was mentally exhausted.
Yeah.
And it's not a bad thing, but it was just really overwhelming for me in between, because at that point I was starting to do interviews and just people coming up saying, I'm rooting for you. And which was really nice to see the dealers rooting for me that work at Wynn that that have dealt to me, and seeing some of the local players coming up and saying they're rooting for me. That was really cool.
Yeah.
I did get a laugh. There's one guy that I played with in Orleans, and I was on break, and they did have the ladies tournament going on. And I was sitting there talking to another friend named Howard, and he comes up, he says, oh, in the ladies tournament? And I said, no. He says, you're playing the satellite? Because they had the satellite going on too, or something else. And I said, no. And I was like, and Howard goes, keep going. And he's like, you're in the, and I was like, I'm still in the main. He's like, you're still in the main? Like, yes, I am. He was like, wow. So that was actually, I thought, kind of funny. He was going down the line, but never thought the main one. But it's like, yeah, keep going. So
that's amazing. So obviously, day 5 didn't end the way you wanted, but talk us through what the experience was like on day 5 and how things played out.
Came into day 5. Basically, I knew I was short, and I was just gonna see if I can pick my spot and just go with it. Unfortunately, I kept getting hands on the button. Is the only time I get hands against Garrett Greer's big blind. And I think I raised his button 4 times, I think it was. And he called each time. He had a hand and beat me 3 out of the 4 times. And in fact, I started showing that I didn't want him to think because he was short as well. In fact, I doubled him up the first hand. And I probably could have taken a little more time to think about calling his shove, because I raised the button with deuces and he didn't have a lot. And he shoved and I called, and I'm thinking, I think it was only 7 bigs. But the point is that it's deuces, and I thought I should probably have taken more time to think about and preserve my stack, because I didn't have a lot starting to work with either. Normally a pair is good, but like I said, I think in hindsight, I probably didn't need to call there. but I did win a good hand later on with aces that I limped in with aces blind versus blind, and I was able to double up and thought I would start from there. Unfortunately, then I went card dead again until my last hand was Jean-Claude got moved to our table. He raised, and well, he actually raised my big blind, and I defended. I think it was with ace 8 or ace 9 heads up, and the flop was all low cards, and I checked, and he bet enough to put me all in. And having played with him, I was going to call, and it turns out, and I told him, I even said to him, I says, I feel like I'm totally ahead here. But I just went ahead and folded the ace high. And it turns out he did say he was on a flush draw, which I said you probably would have gotten there.
Right.
And so I'm thinking, then the very next hand in my small blind, he raises again, and I have ace king of hearts. So I'm thinking, okay, great. It's a good thing I didn't go with that one because here's my hand.
Yeah.
So of course I only had 9 bigs left. I shoved. He snapped called with queens, and they held.
Ah.
So that was my last hand.
So here you are. You've had this incredible run, biggest score of your career, day 5 of a major WPT event. What are your emotions at this point? What are you feeling? What's going through your head as this incredible run's coming to a close?
My husband actually was there. I was stoked. You go through where you think, oh man, if I hit an ace or a king, what might have been. But at that moment, I was just incredibly happy. Like I think I actually tweeted I had never been so happy to bust a tournament, and that was an honest feeling right there. I had never been so happy to bust a tournament. But of course, once it all settles, a couple of days later, you go, oh, it's a king and come, how far could I have gone? But
Sure.
can't help but think that. But at the time, I was no regrets whatsoever. I was just beyond happy because I knew I had done something that was really cool.
Yeah.
But I didn't realize it until once I had the time to think about it, like what I had actually done.
Right.
And that's probably a good thing because it probably really would have freaked me out.
Yeah. What was your thoughts? I mean, the WPT obviously is making waves in the industry. They're making a really strong comeback after, taking a step away during COVID and some of that. Now they're back in the fold. What was your experience like? What did you think of the whole series and the atmosphere and how it was run? What were your thoughts on how the WPT series went?
Oh, I thought it was great. And of course, I'm a little biased because having won a package, I had a little bit of treatment that probably some people didn't get going in. We got the VIP lounge and these other little perks that came with it. So I'm kind of biased when it comes to that. But as far as the overall, the way they ran it and everything they did, I just thought it was outstanding. And I'm actually disappointed. I know some people online tweeted on days 1A or 1B and 1C that there was entertainment that slowed down the tournament. And I was actually disappointed we didn't have any entertainment on day 1A because I actually would have loved to have seen the entertainment. But other than that, everything was just top notch with the live streams every day and just, like I said, the whole overall experience.
Yeah, I've heard great things, and I'm really curious to see what they're going to do next year to build on what they did this year.
It's going to be hard to top. Like I said, when you come out swinging like that and they went over the fences, it's just, so yes, I'm curious myself.
So now moving forward, what does 2023 look like for you with your poker career and your goals and what you're wanting to do now?
Honestly, my goals haven't changed. I've had several people say, oh, you're definitely playing the main now. I'm like, I'm going to satellite in. They're like, no, you just have to play. So I'm probably going to play the main event, but I still would prefer to satellite in. As far as that goes, my goals haven't really changed. I'm a low stakes grinder. As I've said before, I will swing for the fences every now and then, but I'm a low stakes grinder. The fact playing 10K, that's just on a regular basis, is not even remotely in my wheelhouse. I did do one fun thing that I got to scratch off my bucket list. I did try one of these satellites for the 10K that they just had for the Poker Go tour because they had the satellite in the Poker Go studios, and that was always on my bucket list to play in there. And as I said before, if I had won the seat, it was my dream. If I was going to get shellacked, I wanted to be shellacked by the best in the world. So that's off my bucket list. But as far as really changing anything, no, not too much.
So one other question I want to ask you, and then we'll let you get out of here. So we're, how do I say this? We at 100K, we definitely want to see the game grow, especially for women in poker. And you've been playing for a long time. What have your experiences been like in a women in poker, and what are some things you think this industry could do to make the game better for women in poker and help that demographic grow more?
Oh, that question. Make it grow more. I honestly, what they could do, follow the example that WPC just set.
Okay.
I think in a nutshell, follow that example is the best answer that I can give. Like I said, I've been pretty fortunate. I'm not going to say I haven't experienced, some issues at the table with guys just being guys, or as my husband likes to say, they wouldn't have made that call if you weren't a woman. It's like, yeah, I know, but yeah, just to see that unfortunately, I've just accepted the fact that there are just some guys out there that just will never accept being beat by a woman in a pot. Or
right.
I have experience. The first tournament I actually played after the World Championship was a scenario I played. The Sunday at Orleans, I raised, and there was a young kid at the table, and he 3-bet me, but he got two more. I made it 800, he made it 2,200, and he got two callers. So it got back around to me. I made the call, and in all honesty, I would have not made the call because I raised with 9-7 of clubs in late position. And this kid really hadn't played a hand. So I didn't doubt I had, but if they had made the call, I would have just folded and moved on to the next hand. But since they both made the call, and in fact, what was I? I was hijack, he was button, both blinds call. So it got back around to me, I make the call with 9-7. The flop comes 9-7-8. So both blinds check, I check, he c-bets, I raise, he shoves, I call, he had pocket aces. He proceeds to berate me for raising with pocket aces. Then the turn is a brick and the river's an 8. So the board, it pairs. So his aces and 8 wins. And I thought, in fact, I was going to be cool and say nice until he stood up and says, she got what she deserved. She had no business raising with that. That's when I decided I was not going to put up with his crap. By him saying that, because he was a young kid and he said he doesn't play a lot of poker. And I let him know, one, I can raise with any two cards. I said, just because I'm an older woman with gray hair, you think I only raise with aces and ace king? And he said, well, I'm new. Then he tried to back up, so I'm new at poker. I said, I get that. I said, but that's no excuse. And I probably should have gotten a penalty. I called him an effing asshat. I told him, I'm not. Now, you see, I'm always cool at the table. That's how it was done. Because of the fact that him saying about, I got what I deserved. And that's letting him know, one, he's young to poker. And he doesn't get it. It's okay if you want to play aces. Everybody has to learn at some point. And I was totally cool with saying nice hand, because we've all played enough to know that when he's got an overpair and I got that, I could easily get counterfeit, or he can hit another ace. So I wasn't comfortable, but it would have had no problem saying nice hand. But when he did that, that was like, to me, that was stepping over the line. So I get that on occasion, but also I have thick skin, and so I push back.
Well, LoriAnn, I have had so much fun. Like I said, it's been a pleasure playing with you. I was very excited to watch your journey all the way throughout. I wasn't the least bit surprised that you made day 5, but at the same time, I was really excited for you.
You weren't surprised, huh? Okay.
No, well, because again,
you, Rob.
I
wish I could say that with all honesty, that I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to make day 5. No.
I had my money on you to win it. I bet the mortgage, the house, the farm. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was great to see. I think you were the perfect person for that run. And, I again, like I said, you've been a great ambassador to the game. You were a great ambassador throughout that tournament. And I hope that's not the biggest story in your career. I hope that there are bigger stories to come. Thank
you. I hope so too. But if it's not, hey, as I've said more than once, told my closest, like family and friends, that even if nothing this great ever happens again, at least I have my own very small piece of poker history.
You do. And I think it's a very big piece of poker history. I think that's an incredible opportunity. I look forward to battling with you again, hopefully this summer. And, I'm sure we'll get the best of each other multiple times. But thank you again so much for coming on. Thank you for your time. Thank you for willing to share your story.
Thank you for having me. And hello to everyone that's watching. And can I just at least give a big thank you to Andrew Neeme?
Oh, please do.
Without him, none of this would have been possible. So I have to say thank you, Andrew.
Awesome. Well, you have a wonderful night. Have a wonderful weekend. And make sure you tell your husband thanks. And I need to meet him sometime.
Yes, you do. Rob says thank you. He's back there listening.
All right. Have a good weekend, LoriAnn. We'll talk to you
and
soon.
you take care of yourself and feel better.
I will.
Okay?
I will. Thank you.
Bye-bye.